Welcome. Nice to have you here. So as you know, this is our Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness meeting, which, as usual, I want to give a brief bit of explanation about that so that you can get the most out of it. So first of all, what is the intention? The intention is that you can relax into health, wealth, and happiness. What is health, wealth, and happiness? Authentic health, wealth, and happiness is your true self. It's inalienable. So there can be no anxiety about losing it when you know it, because it's who you are. So health and wealth, turns out they have the same root. It means wholeness. So you are wholeness. Happiness is, in this case, I'm talking about unconditional happiness, the happiness of being. It's not happiness because something happens. It's happiness that's intrinsic to you. It's not an up and down thing. It's not sometimes, ooh, I'm elated, and sometimes, oh, I'm down and depressed. It's a steady, ever-present contentment because you're at peace, because you are whole, because you're at home, because you know who you are. And so this is what's available. This is the intention. And this is available how? By relaxing. Now, most people, I believe, it seems to me, they think that relaxing means something different than what I mean. So there's a little bit of clarification here that's necessary. Of course, those who are here live, you've heard me say this before, but I never know who's going to see this on YouTube. Sometimes strange things happen, and all of a sudden, a lot of people will see a video. And so for those people, it's important to clarify, and maybe for all of us, a helpful reminder. And it's really in line with the theme that we're going to take a look at today, to understand that this relaxation is active. It requires your presence, because it's one thing to have a temporary experience that you say, oh, I feel so relaxed. Isn't this nice? Whatever happens, you don't know how it comes about, but somehow you feel suddenly so relaxed. And you say, oh, this is so delightful. And I wish it could always be like this. But of course, it won't always be like that, because the nature of this world is that it's constantly vibrating. There's up and down. That's its nature. Don't expect it to change. That's how it has to be. So there's always change. So if you say, oh, this is it, I need this forever, this is the relaxation that I need, then that's not going to happen. So you're going to feel anxious because you're trying to cling to it. You're trying to maintain it, and you can't. And you have no idea what really happened. And it turns out what actually happened is not what you thought happened. You thought that what was so delightful was the experience of, I don't know exactly what we think it is. We think it's something. We think it's a particular kind of thing. And it turns out that that's not at all what it is, but we don't know what it is because we're not actually paying attention. And so in order to discover what it really is, what the true relaxation is that we've been missing, it's the relaxation in the relaxation. Every time there's relaxation, it's there, but we don't recognize what it is. And so because we don't recognize it, we don't know how to recognize that all the time. And so it seems to come and go because the experience that reveals it comes and goes. But if we're actively relaxing, that is, if we're paying attention, then we get to discover what the truth of relaxation is. And that relaxation is what gives us what we truly want, which is that health, wealth, and happiness of our true self, to be who we are, which is freedom, which is peace, which is abundance, truly. So that's the basic setup. That's what we're about. That's what we're doing. That's the intention here. That's what's available. And it really is available. It's not something that you have to wait for some future conditions. You don't have to, it doesn't depend upon you having $1 million or other people treating you the way that you want, or other people behaving the way that you think they should, or governments doing what you think they should, or your body to be the way that you think it should, or any of these other things. None of that's required. There are absolutely no conditions for it. And that's good news, because if there were conditions for it, then it would come and go. Because again, the conditions are always changing. You can't make the conditions stay around forever. It won't ever happen. I don't want to get too hung up on that, but it is such an important point. I do want to just make sure that it's clear to everybody that that is true, because if you don't understand that, then you'll suffer unnecessarily. And most people are suffering from that delusion, whether they know it or not. So I'll just take a moment to clarify that so that it can be helpful. The nature of this world is that it is vibration. I've said this before. I'll say it probably many times, but it's such an important point. It's really worth repeating. Because even if you think you've understood it, you haven't really fully understood it until it's so clear that then you just stop worrying. Because the nature of this world is vibration. So everything that's happening is vibration. Sound is vibration. The light is vibration. All of our senses are vibration. Our thoughts are vibration. So all of this can be measured, right? We have instruments that can measure this, in case you're a skeptic and you think, oh, this sounds like some sort of new age nonsense. Everything's vibration. No, it's just actually everybody who has any awareness at all of this can agree, whether they any end of the spectrum in terms of their beliefs about anything else. But if they have awareness about what's actually happening, they can agree it's all vibration. It's measurable. Now, what is the nature of vibration? If you were to graph it, if you were to give a visual representation of it, we see it's doing this up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. That's nature. So everything is always changing. It's never, ever, ever going to be the same. You can't ever hold on to it, no matter what. So if you think that that you have to have certain conditions for your okayness, then it's an impossible situation and you're just setting yourself up for misery. And there's no way around that. As long as you believe that there are certain conditions for your okayness, for your happiness, for your health and wealth. If you say the only way that I can be wealthy is if I have $1 million. The only way that I can be healthy is if my body is the way that I think it should be. The only way that I can be happy is if the weather is such and such and other people behave in such and such way and I have only these particular kinds of thoughts. Then it will never happen. So you're cutting yourself off from health, wealth, and happiness in that case, because you've said these are the conditions, and only when those conditions are met will it be possible. And I say it will never happen. Maybe it will happen, but it won't stay. It will happen like that, and then it'll be gone. So it's good news that the true fulfillment that you actually want, that gives you everything more profoundly than what you think you want. So much better, so much better. It's absolutely complete. That is unconditional. But we have to be able and willing to see it for ourselves, right? Because if you don't see it for yourself, then it doesn't matter at all. And this is the really wild thing about it, is that it's always here. And great masters have declared this forever, apparently. They're telling us that it's already here. And people are saying, where? I don't see it. But you don't see it because you don't you don't um, you don't look carefully enough. Because what happens is most people, they say, I don't see it, but what they're looking to is not what's here. What they're looking to is their beliefs about what's here. They're just looking to their overlay. And most people have no clue that they're even doing that. The moment I say that, the majority of people who hear this will scratch their heads and say, how could that be? That's crazy. I'm not doing that at all, they'll say. I'm seeing what's here. I'm not just seeing my overlay. But the thing about it is that you can argue with this all you want. And I'm not saying you are necessarily arguing with it, although truth be told, on some level you are. Because if there's no argument at all, then there's just absolute recognition of it. But for those who are arguing to the degree that they're arguing, just see that that argument doesn't get you what you want. You've been making that argument in various ways for your whole life, insisting that things should be other than they are, that other people are wrong, that the world is wrong, that there's something wrong. This is not it. It's not here. And that there are certain conditions that have to be met. And that argument only always makes you miserable. So if you really sincerely take a look, you'll have to recognize, gee whiz, it's not worth doing anymore. Because if I'm right, if you're making that kind of argument, you have to just see, if I'm right, then it's a totally hopeless situation. You know, if what I'm arguing is right, then it's just absolutely hopeless. If I'm right that there are certain conditions that have to be met for okayness, if I'm right that there's something wrong, and I don't mean something wrong with my thinking, my perception, my beliefs, my overlay, I mean something wrong with this. If I'm believing that and accepting that that's true and arguing for that, if I really believe that's true, give it up. What's the point of even being alive? It's an absolutely hopeless situation. You'll never succeed. Nobody will ever succeed. Nobody can gain that much power to be able to make everything exactly the way they think it needs to be. And that's good, because the power that already exists that makes things as they are, which is perfect, should not be messed with. Think about that. This is the absolute intelligence, which is the basis of reality. If this was not exactly as it is, it's the end. It's infinite atom bombs. If this, which is the foundation, which is the anchor of reality, if that was disturbed even the slightest, if there was any imperfection, and so thank goodness that it cannot be messed with. But we can argue till we're blue in the face, and we hurt. But when there's enough pain, then you'll be willing and open to hear this truth, which is that you've been seeing it all wrong. Your argument is not a good one. It's only hurtful to you. Just see that that's not an argument worth having. So just stop arguing for it. Just stop arguing that you're right. Just stop arguing that your beliefs are good beliefs. Stop clinging to them. Just see that they're bad beliefs. They hurt you. So open then to the possibility that you have been mistaken. And what a great thing that is. What a relief. I've been mistaken. I mean, it's a very intelligent thing to do, to finally admit that you're wrong. So have the courage to do so, just to take an honest look and see all of the things that I've been believing, which are hurtful to me, painful to me. I'm wrong. And if I'm not wrong, then so what? I don't, it's not even, it's not, I'm, I, I don't, I'm not going to argue for it, even if I'm right, because it's a bad belief. It's a bad way to see things. So just be willing to let go. And then what's possible is that you can actually start to see what is. And when I say that, don't expect that it's going to be like the light goes on. I mean, that could happen. But that's, I think, somewhat rare. And so if you're waiting around for that to happen, then you're possibly waiting in vain. And it's not necessary. You can begin. That's why I say begin. You can begin to see things as they are. So bit by bit. And so this is the topic that 21 minutes in, this is the topic that I'd like to look at today, which is the amazing superpower that all humans have, but very few use, which is the power of self-awareness. And it gives you everything. It gives you complete fulfillment of everything that you truly desire, much more deeply and completely than what you can even imagine. And that's maybe a bold claim, but it's the truth. Because every other faculty that we have has a limit. It can only give us so much. So we have, intellectual faculties, for example, and they're amazing, no doubt. I mean, we can do incredible things, create an enormous amount of suffering, for example, but also many other things we can do with the intellect. But it has a limit. It has a very, very hard and painful limit, which is that it doesn't know its own source. And so there's always an anxiety. Just notice the truth of that. It's always looks in one direction. It's always looking out there to the objects. It can rearrange all kinds of objects and it can do all kinds of amazing things. But what it can't do is it can't actually look to see what its own source is. It doesn't know what it really is. And so it makes a really fatal error, which is that it assumes that it assumes its own primacy. It's like, well, I've always been here as far as I know, so I guess I'm the beginning and the end of all that is. But then you see what a setup that is for anxiety, because there's always a knowing that there is an end to it. So it has a limit, and that limit it turns out to be devastating. So I'm not saying that we have to abandon it and get rid of it. It's not a problem. But we want to actually start to use our true superpower that is limitless, because it can give us what nothing else can. It can give us authentic health, wealth, and happiness. And I say give, it can't give us anything. It can reveal who we really are. Because, well, I won't say because, let's just take a look at how this works. So what do I mean by self-awareness? Because most people will say, oh, I'm perfectly self-aware. Or other people will say, what is this self-awareness? What does that mean? And it's not something that we can define as an object. This is where it all gets a bit dicey, I understand, but we can be very clear in how we can be clear about it without turning it into an object. And so the way to understand this, what I'm talking about with self-awareness, is self-study, self-observation, to actually start to look at what is actually happening and see that almost everything is just a pre-programmed reaction. And you take most of that to be yourself, and so you set about trying to defend it or fix it or do something with it. But it's all it only makes things worse. So I'll give you an example. Have you ever had an argument with somebody? Just think about a time you had an argument with somebody. And in that argument, assuming that the argument didn't end in self-awareness, which it rarely does. So maybe you had a case where it ended in self-awareness, but think of another time. You'll see that all of those arguments, they begin and end in a hardness with some assumptions that are being made about who I am and who this other person is and what's right and what's wrong and how everybody should think and etc. And then the thing just goes. And the outcome is already predetermined because you've got your view and they've got their view, and you're just going to fight it out. And then what results is some more hardness, right? And you've got hardness about the situation and the other person. How could anybody be so wrong? How could anybody be so cruel? How could anybody be so stupid? Why isn't everybody so enlightened like me? But what we don't look at in those situations is we don't actually just look at what's really happening here. Who's defending what and for what reason? What is it that we expect will come out of this? What's needed here? Why? Who cares? And these are questions that you cannot answer in a superficial way. What is required is self-awareness. You have to actually look. You have to look, and the answers that the authentic answers are not answers with the intellect, because what's pointed to is something that's beyond the intellect. The intellect will discover its own limitation, and it will stop for a moment because it will be clear that it's incapable of actually answering these questions, because all of these are pointing back to the source. Who is it? Who wants to know? Who cares? Who needs this? Why? What's the purpose of any of it? What's it going to give and to whom? And what starts to be revealed in that, it's a process. So it's not, the answers again are not objects. You're not going to come up with an answer in words that's going to nail it. And you say, that's the answer. And we can all agree on that. Because what it's pointing to you to is who you are. So you have to engage with the process sincerely. But look, you just see, okay, so in the process, you'll start to see, well, there's a bunch of assumptions here. I'm believing that I'm right. And this is important that this other person agrees that I'm right. Everybody should see things the way that I see things. Everybody should agree with me. And what's that going to give me? Well, I guess I'll get a temporary little hit of something. And then what? Oh, then I'll go back to being miserable again. So you just have to see, this is the process that's going on. You just have to see, you kind of take a step back from it, see it impersonally for a moment, and you just see that, isn't that what's always going on? and if it's not with the argument, it's with the next thing that you think you need. You need that thing, and that's going to give you whatever it is, whatever your thing is. You know, you need the new car, you need the new spouse, you need the new house, you need the new vacation, you need the new career, you need the new lifestyle, you need the new clothes, you need the new religion, you need the new whatever. And you think that's going to give it to me. But if you take a step back, you'll see this has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? Right? That's what you start to see is, oh, I've been chasing after things. I've been defending. And every time I fooled myself, every time I was actually completely asleep. This is the amazing thing is you start to realize you thought you were awake and then you realize I have been completely asleep all the while I thought I was awake. I was asleep, completely hypnotized because I had no idea who I was. I was acting as though I was this character. And who is this character? There's not even any such character. It's all just imaginary. Sure, I can point to a lot of things. I can say, look, here's the body, and I can see that body in the photographs, and I've got the, the deed to the house that has my name on it, and I've got the things that, I got the insurance and the bank account, and other people can, I've got the email address and everything. But who is the actual person? Who is this one really? And you start to see, well, it doesn't exist. It's a ghost. And I've been all the while defending and maintaining all of this stuff, all of the things, the positions, the beliefs, the possessions and relationships and all the rest of it as a kind of shell to pretend and maintain this delusion that I am this character, when if I pause for a moment and I take a step back and I tell the real truth, I see that all that's actually there is just all of that shell, all of the habits and the beliefs and the patterns and all of that. But who is it that actually all of that matters to? And again, this is a process. So you don't think, if you think, oh, well, I should have the right answer right away. No, this is a process that you have to engage in sincerely. But like I said, this is the one true, authentic human superpower that everybody has, but almost nobody utilizes it. And it, and that's that. Sadly, that's the truth. Almost nobody utilizes it. And even those who do utilize it rarely. And even those who have glimpsed its power still don't use it often enough because they haven't fully understood and accepted the true power of it. But this one thing, if you sincerely engage in the process endlessly, gives you everything that beyond what you could dream of. Again, because it's giving you the true peace that you actually long for. It's pointing you to the true wholeness that you already are. Because again, look at all of these situations that occupy so much of your time and your energy. Look, see how much stress is in your life. And all of that stress, just take an honest assessment of it presently. Doesn't all of that stress have to do with this character? I'm saying this, not this character for you, but do this for yourself. Point to this character. Doesn't it all depend upon this character for you? All of it does. But we don't actually take the time sufficiently to clarify what is the actual source of this character. Who is this really? Instead, we have settled for all of this shell, this superficial stuff, and all the stress has to do with that. All the worrying about all of this shell. And something that I said earlier, which is very relevant, which is that the shell is all subject to up and down, change, constant fluctuation. So we're thinking that we have to create, arrive at, and maintain the perfect shell. And that's the condition under which we believe that that okayness will emerge. But that will never be able to achieve that because it's always changing. So even if we got it for a split second, that would be the end of it. And we might not acknowledge that consciously all the time, but underlying is an intelligence that recognizes that. And so there's always an anxiety. So this superpower of self-awareness, again, which everybody has, but few exercise, is the only thing that can solve this, because everything else is caught up in trying to fix and maintain this shell. It's all based on the delusion that I am this shell, without actually taking a look and questioning, who am I really? So in every situation, this is the brilliant thing though. And so it's not bad. There's no bad news here, actually, although some of it sounds like bad news, but it's all very good news, because the perfection of life, remember, I did say there's an absolute perfection, and you cannot mess it up. It's always here, no matter what, no matter how badly you mangle things. You cannot escape from this perfection, because that perfection is the very basis of reality. And so this perfection is always here in such a way that in any moment, if you choose right now just to stop, pause, take a step back, and actually observe what's really going on in a impersonal way, just to see the facts of the matter, what's really going on, then what is offered to you is the opportunity to discover yourself, to discover the inherent wholeness that's already here, the inherent okayness, contentment, peace, freedom that's already here, that's independent of all of the conditions. So I'm not saying that necessarily when you take a step back and you observe and you engage in this process of self-awareness sincerely, that the shell is going to look the way that you think it should, or you would like it to. It might. That's not impossible. It depends entirely upon how, on whether, how much that shell is in or out of alignment with what who you really are. So if it's completely out of alignment, then be prepared for some change. I mean, if your whole lifestyle and everything and is organized around some just enormous self-deception, then when you actually start to engage in self-awareness, you'll start to see how painful it is that you've been trying to maintain and build something that's just a lie, something that in your heart you don't care about at all. You don't care about any of these things. You don't care about any of these positions or beliefs or attitudes or anything. So if that was the case, then big change will happen, and that might be uncomfortable. For the majority, it won't be that severe. There will be some things that will be let go. There will be some discomfort in that, because out of habit, we've attached to a lot of things that in our hearts we don't actually want or care about. And so the more that you engage in self-study sincerely, with self-awareness, you'll see just what I'm talking about. So let me be a little more specific about the process. So like I said, this perfection is always here. And so this perfection is actually the supreme intelligence, which is creating everything. And so everything that is occurring is a perfect opportunity, a perfect mirror for you, should you choose to 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 engage with your superpower, self-awareness. It will show you, it will reveal to you exactly the lies and deception that you've been believing, so that you can then let them go, because that will more deeply clarify who you are. So understand that none of what's happening is bad. In some sense, we could say everything that's happening is good, because there's a desire to know yourself more deeply. So that might be received and experienced as painful at times, but it's not actually bad. And in some sense, as I say, it's good, because you have a desire to know yourself in particular ways, right? You want to know. Just think about in your life some things that you have, some challenges that you've met. Hopefully you've had this experience in your life where not everybody has, but maybe you've had an experience in your life where you've learned something, like you really learned some lesson, like a profound life lesson, where you learned something that has been very meaningful to you. And you might realize, okay, you might have learned that through some very trying circumstances. You might have experienced quite a lot of pain, anguish, grief, difficulty, might have been very challenging for you. But on the other end of it, having learned that lesson, you discovered something that's very meaningful, very true, very valuable, that actually reflects to you something authentic about yourself. Maybe not the completeness, but something. It reveals something that is reflective of that truth. And so what I'm getting at here is that that's always true. So we have a desire to know ourselves, and we can't know ourselves unless we can have that kind of reflection. I mean, we can't know ourselves in that way, that we have the desire to know ourselves, without that reflection. So the experiences offer us that. And so that's always true. So whatever it is that happens in your life that you might experience as painful or difficult, it's not bad. It's a great opportunity for you to fulfill your desire to know yourself in this way. But in order to fulfill that, you have to stop fighting and resisting and struggling. And instead, you have to accept and receive and engage in self-awareness. So you start to look at every situation, every opportunity, as an opportunity for this kind of self-study. So you just start to look and see, okay, in this moment, it's particularly valuable when you're experiencing pain. I mean, it could be physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, whatever kind of pain, whatever kind of pain you experience, that will be helpful to you if it is a reminder to you to pause, take a step back, and start to look at what is actually happening here. And when I say what is actually happening here, just see, okay, as if you're just like, as if it was it's helpful to slow it down. So you can, it's amazing that you can do it. You can slow it down. Usually everything is happening very fast in our minds. All the reactions are happening so fast, but you just take a step back. If you can just disengage a little bit, it's very helpful. And then just slow it down and observe what's happening. You'll see, okay, here's what I'm believing. Here are the thoughts that are coming across the my mind. Thoughts like, that person's wrong, that person's an idiot, they shouldn't be doing that, they're hurting me, I'm afraid, I might not get what I'm wanting, I might lose something. Just see, okay, these are the thoughts that are happening. When I'm believing those things, how am I behaving? You just start to notice, and you'll just being aware of your breath is very, very helpful for this, because when you're just aware of your breath, you'll start to notice that when you're stressed, reactive, caught up in the whole thing, then your breathing is chaotic, unpleasant. So you can be aware of your breath and notice that will help you to start to notice what you're doing, because your breathing, if you're completely at rest, then your breathing is done for you by nature. And there's a total balance there. Very few people are ever completely at rest. Instead, there's always this overlay of distress. So if you're observing the breath, then you'll notice that the more that overlay of distress there is, the more the breathing is controlled by the reactivity. So you'll notice that the breathing is not pleasant. It's not a truly natural breath. And so how is, you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? The breath in that case is a mechanical process being done through the biomechanics of the body. So what I'm getting at is that there's activity taking place that you can become aware of. You can become aware of how you're holding some tension, resisting something physically. So this is the self-awareness that I'm talking about. So you notice, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm behaving. Then how am I feeling? Well, no big surprise, I'm feeling terrible. But you need to see the connection. I'm thinking this, I'm behaving this way, I'm feeling bad. Now, as you see those things, the power of this self-awareness is just seeing these things starts to dissolve them. You can try every other technique. You can go to therapy for decades. You can use all and every kind of substance. You can, in every kind of setting, you can even do otherwise what would be very useful and helpful things like meditation, but in the wrong way, and fail to get good results, fail to get lasting change, because and you'll be working very hard and spend a lot of money and upset yourself in a lot of ways and make a lot of difficulty in your life. But if you just simply use this power of self-awareness, it will do everything for you. You just, because the missing key with all the reason why all those other things don't work most of the time is because, and the reason why they do work when they work, rarely, is self-awareness. Because until you can see what's happening, the whole of it, and see it for what it is, and to some degree have some awareness that you are the awareness of it, that you are not that thing. So there's a bit of a stepping back from it Until that, then you're just fighting. And you're fighting against something that's too big, because you are trying to you basically, what's happening presently is the result of everything that's come before. And that should be very clear when you understand what I've been saying here, because when I'm saying that you've been asleep thinking that you were awake, so just see the truth of that. Maybe not, some of you have been practicing self-awareness, so maybe it's not as true now, but if you think about 5 years ago, you thought you were awake, but when you reflect on it now, you'll see, oh my goodness, you weren't awake at all, you were completely asleep. And so if you see, then all that was happening in its entirety, there was nothing apart from this. It was all just completely a result of everything that had come before. It was the entirety of everything that came before, just in sequence, like dominoes knocking one another over, leading to this thing. And that's what's going to happen, because there's no self-awareness. Couldn't be anything other possible, because it's all just what's happening. So it's the result of everything that came before. So how could you possibly change that unless there's self-awareness? The self-awareness is what takes you out of it, so that you can see, oh, it's all just dominoes. This reaction that's happening now, this big thing that's coming up, that I'm taking so personally and seriously, and thinking that I'm right and I've got to fight for my thing, actually is not me at all. It has nothing to do with me. It's just the dominoes going from the past. When you can see that, and then you see, and it's very painful, right? That's the key. The reason the self-awareness is so powerful is it gives you that. It allows you to see it's all just the effect from the past. There's no way I can overcome that. It's infinite past, huge momentum. I'm not going to stop that. In fact, I couldn't possibly stop it, because it's already happening. It's too late for me to change it, because it's already happening. But I can actually observe what's happening. If I'm not caught up in it, I can actually observe what's happening. And maybe for the first time in my life, I actually see it for what it is. And I learn something. And what I learn is, holy cow, I've been asleep and I've been reacting, and it's very painful. And I just get more of the same. And then you might say, but then how do I change it? Don't. This is the incredible power of self-awareness. You just stop. And what you'll see is something very amazing. I'm going to use this metaphor of the dominoes again. So hopefully that's clear, the thing, but you set up the dominoes in line, and then you knock one and the sequence goes. Every time that you've been asleep and just reacting, what you've been doing without realizing it is you've been taking those dominoes that have already been knocked over back there, and you've been putting them in front, so that it just continues. But when you have the self-awareness in that moment and you do nothing, you don't put any more dominoes in the line, and it stops. Not because you've stopped it, because you stopped putting the dominoes in the line to get knocked over. And so importantly, you've maybe already put some dominoes there that are going to get knocked over. So you say, well, I'm practicing self-awareness and it's still going on, and I'm still experiencing some intensity. Okay, fine. You got ahead of yourself. You put a lot of dominoes there, but just continue practicing self-awareness. Stop insisting that you've got to stop the thing that's already happening. And you will see eventually it stops. You didn't stop it. It stops because you stop feeding it. You stop putting more in its wake. This is the incredible power of self-awareness. It is the, I would say, I don't think there's any other, I don't think there's any way around it, because it's fundamentally uh, what it is that offers what you truly want, because it is pointing you to recognize that you are that awareness. But you cannot ever arrive at that by any other means, because so long as you're identified with that shell, then again, there's a limit to that, and it cannot become aware of its source, because the source is awareness. That awareness can be understood sort of like a light. Now, that light shines on all the things so that the things can be seen. The things don't have the light. So if you are identified as the thing, then you're saying, well, I'm illuminated. I guess I'm that light. But it can't actually find the light, because so long as it's just looking within itself, because the light is coming from the awareness that is shining on it. But all along, you were never those things. You were always the light that was shining and illuminating them. So you have to take a step back, pause, slow down, observe, see what's actually happening. And without it, it's not the kind of thing that, it's a very different kind of technique than most of the techniques, because most of the techniques out there are trying to do the impossible, trying to awaken the thing that's never, cannot be awakened, because has no awareness. It cannot be awakened. You can't awaken a habit. You can't awaken a pattern. You can't awaken an idea. You can only awaken yourself as you are, which is awareness, consciousness. So this technique is different from all of those other techniques, because this one says none of those other things are going to work. You have to take a step back, see all those other things, and in seeing them, what starts to happen is it starts to dawn on you that, well, if I'm not all of those things, because I'm not, because I'm aware of all of them, there they are, they're going. And I have been hypnotized and believing all along that I was something that I can't find, actually. I can see all those things. I can see that I'm not any of those things, right? I'm not, there's the thought. Am I the thought? No. There's the feeling. Am I that feeling? No. There's the belief. Am I that belief? No. You just start to see all the things that are happening. And then you'll start to realize, well, wait a second, who am I? And all along, you start looking, where is this thing that I think I am? And all you find is more of these things that you're not, because they come and go. You're aware of them. You have to slow down and step back in order to see it. But as you do, you'll see, okay, that comes and goes. I'm aware of it. But here I am. I'm still here. So you keep looking. Well, where's the one that I am? Because you were assuming that you were something. And you will just start to naturally happen the more that you just engage in this process sincerely, and you'll see, where is it? Where is the one that I am? You're looking all around. Where is it? Where is it? I know it's got to be here. Where is the one that's so upset? Where is the one that this matters to? Where is the one that all this is hinging upon? And you'll see, try as you might, you can't ever find it. You just get more things that are not you. And so it starts to dawn on you. So who am I? Who am I? I'm here. I know I'm here. It's undoubtable. I'm here. But which one am I? You'll have to see, I'm none of these things. No matter how many things I see, I'm none of these things, and yet I'm always here. And then you start to realize what's being pointed to. You are already complete. You are wholeness. You are health, wealth, and happiness. It's inalienable, cannot be taken away, it's unconditional. So all of these things, there's always up and down. Your finances are always going to change. Your relationships are always going to change. Your body's always going to change. The weather's going to change. The politics are going to change. Everything's going to change. But your true health, wealth, and happiness is independent of all of that. And you will see it. The more you engage in this self-awareness, you'll just start to see how there's just a habit of identifying with something that can't be found. And you just start to realize, but I'm here all along. I'm already here. I'm here when it's up. I'm here when it's down. I'm here when it's good. I'm here when it's bad. I'm here when I like it. I'm here when I don't like it. I'm always here. So what are the chances that I won't be here? It's a process. You have the wrong expectation that you're going to arrive at the right answer today, you will be frustrated. But if you engage in it sincerely and you just open to it, you'll start to see how wonderful it is. It's really very wonderful. So that's it. For those who are here live, I'm happy to stay on for Q&A in case there's anything. Let me end this recording.